I'll pass over to one of my colleagues, um, Kartikeya, who's going to give you a short taster lecture to give you an idea of the sort of things that we talk about on the course, and also to give you an idea of how we teach. And then I'll pass over to another colleague, Ben, who's going to talk to you about student finance, how that works, and what options there are for you if you're thinking about ways of funding your studies. And then we'll finish off with a question and answer session with the staff members, but also with two of our students, Emma and Alanis, who are current students. Emma's in the third year and Alanis is in the first year, and they can help answer your questions about what it's like to be on our course, what it's like to study at UCL, what it's like to be in London, and so on if you're not from London. If you've got questions, then you should see at the bottom of the screen there's a button marked Q&A. You can ask questions anytime you like during any of the sessions, and the speakers either will answer them at the end of each section, or we will answer them in the Q&A session with us and the students at the end. So I'm going to start first of all by introducing you to our course. Um, so the BSc Crime and Security Science is the name of our program, and you might be thinking, well, what does that mean, and why is it not called criminology? So those are probably the first questions that I should answer. So the first question I'm going to ask is what do crime scientists do? I'm Kartikeya and I are crime scientists, and that's what we do. And we do these sorts of things. So we try to solve crime and security problems, and that might be working out how to stop online fraud against older people, which is one of the things Kartikeya is going to talk to you about later on. Or we might help design products that are harder to steal. We might try to, I've got several colleagues who their job is to try to spot future crime problems before they happen. So they're thinking about, at the moment, about what crime problems might come about as a result of of society's attempts to combat climate change. Or we might do things like help police investigate international human trafficking, which is something that I've been involved in with several other colleagues in our department. So what we're trying to do is solve crime and security related problems. Now, in a criminology program and in a criminology department, they'd be trying to do that by using ideas from disciplines like law and psychology and sociology. And we use all of those. And those are useful ideas and useful tools for us to use, but they're not the only things that we use. And what makes our program different is that as well as taking ideas from these different disciplines, we also take ideas from lots of other disciplines, from computer science to history or mathematics through to geography. So one example of that is that I teach a module called crime mapping, where we learn how to understand where crime concentrates in particular places, why it happens in those places more than in others. And that's really useful in for organizations like the police or local government trying to work out how to most effectively prevent crime. So the one thing that really makes our program different from any other undergraduate program you can study in the UK that's related to crime is that we take ideas from all sorts of different um, disciplines and relate them to crime. So what does the program look like? Well, in the first year, what we're trying to do is we're trying to get everybody to have the same mix of ideas as everyone else, because lots of students come to us with very different combinations of A levels, for example, if you're studying A levels now, and so. The idea of the first year is to get everyone up to a common standard in the core ideas that we need to understand. So we introduce you to the program with Introduction to Security and Crime Science. We'll then do look at things like the sociology of crime in crime and society and the psychology of crime. But we're also starting to help you develop skills during this first year. So in the first term, the programming module. Now, sometimes students coming in are a little bit nervous about programming. We don't expect you to have done any programming, any coding before you come to us. Uh, and so we start very much from scratch and help people build up so that even if they've come in, as most students do, with no coding experience at the start of the 3 years, by the time they leave, our students are confident programming in two different languages, and that helps them a lot. And that's something that's very common for students to use in jobs that they go into after they graduate. So by the end of the first year, everybody's got the same foundation, the same ideas from a different range of disciplines. So in the second year, we then go on to introduce some more advanced ideas in topics like cybercrime, for example, and also talk more about research and about how we work out the things that we do. But in the second year, you'll also have the opportunity to do optional modules in order to start tailoring the degree to the topics that you are most interested in. And for about half of students, those optional modules will include a work placement, and I'll talk more about the work placement in a moment. And then in the third year of the program, there are a couple more compulsory modules on topics like terrorism and criminal investigation, but also more opportunities to do optional modules. And that's not just optional modules from within our department, that's optional modules from across the whole of UCL, as long as those modules are related to crime or security in some way. So you might want to go and do modules on international security from other departments, or if they're related to relevant skills. And then the other thing that's important about the third year is the research project. And that's where students choose a topic that they are really interested in. We then match them with a supervisor who can work with them on that topic. And then they produce a research project, a dissertation that is that tries to advance knowledge in that particular area. And often students enjoy that because they're choosing what they want to study and what they want to focus on. So I've mentioned optional modules. There are a lot of optional modules. These are some examples of those. I should emphasize these are only examples of the optional modules. So we change optional modules over time because, for example, maybe we need a new module to deal with a new issue. So you'll see ethics of artificial intelligence over there on the left-hand side that probably wouldn't have existed a few years ago. And so by the time you were to get to the third year, these options might have changed, but these are some of the options that we're running this year, for example. So that's what we teach, but how do we do it? Well, we have lectures, as you would expect from any university course. So that's where students are sitting in a room listening to a lecturer introduce ideas around a particular topic, and then we might get the students to answer some questions during that lecture to discuss things with each other, or to do a quiz on their phone or something to help me check that students have understood what I'm saying. And we also then have tutorials. So this is where students are in smaller groups and tends to be and are discussing issues, or maybe they're asked to come and give to come to the tutorial with some ideas or some prep that they've done, and then they discuss that with the tutor. And one thing I should emphasize is that at UCL, almost all of this teaching is done by academic staff. So some universities rely a lot on either contract staff or PhD students to do their teaching. In our department, almost all of the teaching is done by full-time academics who are the expert in those particular topics. We also have a lot of practical workshops. So this is some students from our current second year who are doing some computer-based work in a workshop on one of their modules. Uh, and that's something that we do a lot of because we think that university should be about developing practical skills as well as developing knowledge. We do that, for example, so this is another one of our current students who is presenting some work that she's prepared in a tutorial to the rest of the class. So in that tutorial, each student, a different student each week presents some work they've been doing, and that helps students develop skills in speaking in public, speaking in front of a different audience, asking questions, and so on. And that's something that sometimes students can find a little bit scary at the start, but we do lots of things in the first year to build your presentation skills, give you lots of opportunities to practice, give you feedback on how to get better at presenting so that it's something that students can be really confident about by the time they finish. We have guest speakers who come in to us. So this is a couple of years ago, somebody from BAE Systems came in to talk about their digital intelligence teams. Now, actually, this guest speaker is also one of our former graduates, and because a lot of our graduates go into relevant careers, that I'll talk about in a second. And then we have field trips. So this is a picture from the field trip that students do in the first year, where they go to the Met Police Training Centre at Hendon and learn about things like homicide investigation and ethical use of taser and a variety of other subjects. And last year they met one of the Met's well-being dogs, and that was absolutely the highlight of the day for most students. So I've talked about doing 4 modules in each term. So a typical week on one of those modules looks a bit like this. So you'd start off by preparing for the lecture. So we might give you some things to read or some problems to solve or some exercises to do. You'd then come and have a normally 2-hour lecture with an academic, and then you'll go away, write up those notes, and prepare for the tutorial. Come back for a tutorial, either with the same academic or another member of the team, to discuss the ideas that were covered in the lecture and to work with those and put them into practice in different ways. And then some more writing up, some more summarizing at the end. And you'll be doing that for 4 modules each term. So a different day each week might be on a particular module. And at the end of each module, we'll do assessments. And these aren't just essays and they aren't just exams. So we do, so this is an example of one of our second year students from last year, Susie, who is presenting some work that she's done. And she's presenting that to analysts from the Home Office, so the UK's Interior Ministry. We take all the students on that module down to the Home Office each year. They present their work to staff from the Home Office, and they have lots of really interesting conversations with them. We also do assessed presentations because we know that public speaking skills, presentation skills are really important. This is the winning team from last year for an assessed presentation on my module. And then this is a still from a video that a third year student produced. So the topic there was to summarize what works in relation and what doesn't in relation to a particular investigative technology. So this student chose CCTV and she interviewed experts in CCTV, and then she made that into a video that summarized the state of the evidence on using CCTV for investigations. So I mentioned work placements before, and the work placements, we're quite proud of the work placements because the students who go on those are doing real things. They're doing real projects. So these are some of the things that students have done over the last few years on their work placements. This isn't a work placement where you're just photocopying or just making coffee for the boss. Every year, every work placement involves working on a real problem and trying to solve that. And we have work placements with a variety of different organisations from across the public sector, so police, government, and the private sector. So organisations like ASOS and Theseus and Bureau Happold, who all offer work placements through us. So where do our graduates go at the end? Well, some go into general graduate jobs at companies like PwC. Others go into specialist jobs in the private sector at places like Ridgeway or Bureau Happold. They're both engineering consultancies that have a security team that work out, for example, if they're building a shopping center, how do they make sure that shopping center is resistant to terrorist attacks? And then we also have students go into the public sector. So that might be being a police officer in the Met Police or an intelligence analyst with City of London Police, or going and being a civil servant in the Ministry of Justice or the Home Office. So you can find out more about our course on our website. If you've got any questions after today, you can also email us, but you're very welcome to ask questions at any time throughout the rest of this this session. What I'm going to do now is hand over to my colleague Kartikeya, who's going to give you a sort of taster of what one of our first year lectures looks like. So I'm happy to pass over to him anytime.
Thank you, Matt. I'm just setting my screen set up to share. It's good to see you guys. What I'm going to do today is talk very quickly about I'm going to talk to you about how we teach.
Hey everyone, it seems that Kartikeya might have some issues with his Zoom. I think he's just going to try to join. Ben, I don't know if you would like to do the student funding section instead until Kartikeya maybe manages to rejoin.
Yeah, that's fine. I can do that.
Oh, thank you so much.
No problem.
Yeah, in the meantime, I've put the survey up on the screen for everyone to complete. Thank you so much to those of you who have done it already. It's really useful for us to understand like who attends the offer holder days and how we can tailor our content in the future.
Okay. Okay. In which case then, I'll get started on the student funding presentation. Hopefully, you can all see my screen. So, yeah. So I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about student funding as an undergraduate at UCL, and potentially give a little bit of advice about funding more generally. I work for the Student Funding Office. My name is Ben, and I'm the undergraduate manager of the Student Funding Office. So we are a central office that is responsible for managing UCL's scholarships and bursaries. We are also involved in providing support for things like government loans, the administration of government loans, primarily in the UK, but also some international government loans. And I was asked to come here today to talk to you a little bit about that work that we do. So a bit of information about loans and scholarships. And really what I'm going to go through is just a little bit about budgeting, thinking about the cost of study at UCL, allowing you to have a look at kind of what you're likely to need and the ways that you can then get the money that you will need to cover those costs. So we'll look at cost of study, we'll look at bursaries, we'll look at loans, and then you can ask me any questions that you have about those different areas at the end. So this is the cost of study that we have up on the website within the Student Funding Office on our pages. It includes, so what we mean by the cost of study generally is your fees and your maintenance. This will be the tuition fees that you're paying to the university per year. And then maintenance is kind of a catch-all term that covers the rest of your costs for the year. So this will include things like your accommodation. It will include things like your food, your course materials, toiletries, other bills, household bills, your travel, etc. So the fees, as many of you will probably already know, the home fees for 25-26 are £9,535 per year, and the international fees for 25-26 are from 29,800. So when we talk about the cost of study, what we're thinking of is that fee plus then the amount it's going to take you to live for the year. As I say, this includes things like rent bills, groceries, and travel, as well as course costs and your social lives. You can kind of see on that graphic that I've put on the screen. This is a screenshot taken from one of our web pages, so you can go and find this at the end. There are some links to our web pages at the end as well. People can screenshot if they want to, but this graphic really kind of just shows you a different sets of breakdowns for what that kind of cost is. These are average figures, so these are figures that we have compiled from a variety of different places. This includes the National Student Survey. It includes accommodation figures from UCL and websites like spareroom.co.uk. So this isn't to say this is the exact amount you will need or that every student will spend this amount. Quite naturally, with averages, some students are going to spend considerably more than this, and others will spend considerably less. But as a general direction for you, as a general indicator of the kind of cost we're looking at, you can see there that at the very top, for an undergraduate student who is in UCL self-catered halls, you are likely to be looking at, over the course of the year, about 11,856 with £304 per week. And you can see at the bottom there, the other costs, the additional costs that we're talking about in terms of your essential costs and food and other things is about 3,600. So you'll be looking at about £15,500 for the year for your maintenance, for your living costs. If you add that to your fees, then you're looking at about £24,000 per year overall. These sound like very scary amounts. As I said, they are averages. They are not what you need to have. But it's always worth thinking about. It's good that you are coming to events like this. It's good that you're hearing us talk about them, and it's good for you to start thinking about them now. That is kind of the figure you're aiming at. So this is what we would say it's going to take to support the cost of study for a year at UCL. Now, of course, there are many ways that you can cover those costs. And the first one that we're going to come on to is student loans. I'm sure we will have a lot of UK students here. For students who are in the UK, if you are English from one of the other UK countries but living in England, or indeed some people who have settled status and live in England, will all be eligible for support by Student Finance England, which is where all of the figures on this current slide are coming from. If you are based elsewhere in the UK, then there will be slightly different setups for you. I'm concentrating on Student Finance England at the moment, but there is plenty of information out there on government websites for Student Finance Wales, SAS, which is the Scottish body, Student Finance Northern Ireland. So they offer very slightly different packages, different types of support as well. But for Student Finance England, the way that the loans work is that they are split into two, a bit like the cost of study work breakdown that I showed you previously. You have a fees side and a maintenance side. That's exactly how the loans also operate. So for undergraduates going forward, the full tuition fee is available to get from your student loans from Student Finance England, the 9,535. That amount, everyone who's eligible is eligible for that amount. So it is not means tested or based on your household income or anything like that. The full amount, if you need it, is available. and it will be paid directly to the university on your behalf should you apply for it and be eligible and accepted. That means you don't have to really worry about the tuition fees. So as long as you get your application in, everything goes through in time. Student finance and the university will speak to one another, and the fees will be sorted between the two. If for your maintenance, there is a separate loan which is then available for maintenance that you're much more involved in. So that one will be means tested. You'll be asked when you submit your application to complete a household income assessment, which typically will be your family's household income. That the amount that you're then eligible for will be set against the income that student finance have decided that you have based on the questionnaire that they provide to you. So you can get up to a maximum for a year of 13,762 if you are at UCL. So that will be someone on a lower household income and studying in London. The maximum rate is lower if you study outside London. So UCL does, coming to UCL and studying in London may have additional costs that people may be concerned about, but there also is additional funding out there from student finance. As I said, that maintenance is based on household income and is available for full and part-time undergraduate students. How those loans work is that you don't repay anything on them until after your course is finished. So it feels like a lot of money. It is a lot of money. And when you think about doing a 3-year program, you're adding together, maybe say you've got the full maintenance loan there, you're looking at sort of £23,000 per year over 3 years. That's a lot of money. However, the way that these loans work, unlike loans in some other countries, and unlike typical loans that you would take out in this country that aren't education loans, you don't start repaying until the April after you finish your course. So you finish your course in June, you're not going to begin repayments until at least the April following that. And then your repayments are only based upon your income. So in order to start repaying, I mentioned there on the slide, Plan 5, that is the repayment plan that the current loans are on. So anyone who's taking out a loan for this year would be on Plan 5. You are only going to begin repaying that loan once you are earning more than £25,000. If you stop earning for any reason, if your income drops below £25,000, you'll automatically stop repaying. And the repayment that you make is 9% of your income over the threshold of 25,000. So it's not that once you start earning £25,000, you will begin repaying 9% of your overall income. You will only be repaying 9% of the income that is above 25,000. So if you only earn £26,000, you're going to pay 9% of the extra 1,000, not of the full 26,000. This can feel like a lot of money even still. The one thing that I would say about loans always is that they come directly out of your paycheck. So where you are earning, via PAYE scheme when you're earning, it just comes out of your payslip before you even get your money. You don't repay it yourself. You don't feel the repayment in that sense. You just get paid very slightly less than you normally would have done, but it's all automatic. And as such, although this seems like a lot of money, unlike other types of debt, it does feel a little bit more like it's just an additional bit of tax. It's a little additional bit of national insurance. You don't kind of feel the weight of the debt in the same way. So it's slightly different to other kinds of debt that you might take. And indeed, were you to take out private loans to cover education, they would also be different in that sense. A couple of other things just to mention. In terms of eligibility, the best place to find eligibility for student loans is Student Finance themselves. They are the student loans company. So Student Finance England for if you are in England, as I said, Student Finance Wales or Student Finance Northern Ireland or SAS in Scotland. Lots of places will have information a bit like I'm presenting here that kind of gives you the broad strokes of whether or not you are eligible. If you have any questions about eligibility, you should 100% speak to Student Finance England. Anyone else that's providing information is a secondary source for that information. And just in case anything has changed or anyone has misunderstood something, it is always best to go directly to Student Finance England. They are more than capable of answering any kind of complicated inquiries you might have. The other thing to say is that just because you are eligible for loans and considered to be an eligible student for student finance. That doesn't necessarily mean that you are considered a home for a UK student by UCL and vice versa. In most instances, that would be the same. A UK student, according to student finance, would likely be a UK student according to UCL. There can be instances though where those things don't quite match up if the regulations around them are very slightly different. So that's always worth bearing in mind as well. Alongside the loans themselves, when you apply to student finance and you provide your household income, what will also be assessed is your eligibility for the UCL bursary. So the UCL undergraduate bursary is automatic in the sense that we just use the household income assessments that are done by student finance. As long as you tick a box on the form when you do your loan assessment to say you would like for your information to be shared with the university, it will be automatically shared, and we will automatically assign the bursaries to people within the certain brackets that are eligible for them. So anyone whose household income is a UK student whose household income falls below £42,875 is eligible for a bursary, as you can see on the breakdown there. Again, a bit like the loan, the lower your income is, the more you're eligible for. This bursary is paid on top of any loans that you receive. The bursary is non-repayable, so it's not a loan. We are just paying you the bursary, and that will be paid in termly instalments. So that is like your maintenance loan will be paid to you in termly instalments, as would be the UCL undergraduate bursary. Those amounts that there are per year. So if your income is below £16,000, you'll receive a £3,000 bursary, which will be in the form of approximately £1,000 per term, usually paid at the beginning of each term. We have, beyond that, lots of other types of funding. So the UCL bursary is our main bursary for low-income household students, but we also have a variety of other scholarships and bursaries available. This is really just a snapshot of a handful of them. However, it's worth having a look at all of the different ones we have available. The majority of things that we have are also based on financial need and kind of lower household income. So over the last few years, UCL has had considerably less awards that are just academic merit, because ultimately, in order to come to UCL, you are going to need to be academically excellent anyway. So a lot of our schemes are then aimed at students who either are from lower income backgrounds or who can demonstrate financial need. We do have a number of other factors that factor into specific awards, as you can see from these ones here. There are awards that are for leadership. Some awards are available based specifically on different residencies or different departments. And the award at the bottom there is for students who are from UWC colleges. So there are different eligibility criteria that factor into these. But typically, the decision-making process will be made on the basis of financial need. That is all done within my department. So you will submit a form to us for UK awards, or for most of our UK awards. That will be via what we call the UGFA, which is the Undergraduate Funding and Access Awards. So you'll be able to go onto our website, see the Undergraduate Funding and Access Awards, which will have several things kind of included within it. Some of them appearing here. So things like the Professor Sir Malcolm Grant Scholarship, the Douglas Johnson Scholarship are within the Undergraduate Funding Awards. So you just apply once. You will go on using your student portal. You will click to apply. You will apply to these awards, and we will consider you for all of the awards that you're eligible for. So taking those examples there, if you are a UK student who is in the Department of History and you apply to the Undergraduate Funding and Access Awards, we will automatically consider you for the Douglas Johnson Scholarship. There are several different awards under that umbrella, so they're not all listed here. As I say, this is just a snapshot to provide some examples, but you can go onto the website, you can see all of the awards that are included within the Undergraduate Funding and Access Awards, and just apply the once in order for us to assess you for all of those. Most of our international schemes have now closed for this year. So we are, usually those close mid to late April. Our big one that we have listed there, the Global Undergraduate Scholarship, closed at the beginning of this week. So if we have international students here today, I'm hoping that you may have already seen that and applied to it before it closed. There are other funding options available, but the big UCL schemes, the ones that my team manages, will typically have closed by this point in the year. We will be looking to let people know results of those things. They're different for each scheme, but things like the global undergraduate will be looking to let people know the results by the UCAS deadline. The UK schemes, typically we tend to let people know at the end of the summer once the results days have come through and people's places have all been confirmed. But you can find out lots more about these specific schemes and also other schemes that are available, both managed by my team and beyond. You know, UCL is a very big institution. Lots of departments have their own funding, their own prizes and things as well. You can find out about all of that on the Scholarships Finder. So the Scholarships Finder is on our website. Again, I'll put the link up at the end. You can go onto it. It's a bit like a search engine. You go onto here, you can enter your, whether you're a prospective student, the academic year you want to look at, the study level that you are studying, and then a department if you want to list by department, or a domicile, country of domicile, you want to list by your country, and you can see all of the different schemes that are either very specifically available for that department or country, or indeed just schemes that are more general, but people from those departments and countries are able to apply to them. There's that kind of graphic there shows you how the results will look. So you'll see a little snapshot for that, say the access opportunity there, which tells you the deadline, broadly what the value is and what the criteria are, what the eligibility is. And then you can click on the blue text link and go through to the webpage and read the full description, how to apply, what the eligibility includes, etc. So the Finder is, I would love to say it was exhaustive and that every single possible thing that we have available is listed on there. We try to keep it as up to date as we can. As I say, UCL is a very big institution. Lots of people do lots of different things. So there may be things that aren't on the Finder. It's always worth checking with people. It's always worth checking. I mean, all of our schemes, the central schemes will definitely be on the Finder, but it's worth checking with departments and faculties and other places just to make sure there isn't anything that we've missed out on or not been told about. But we do try to keep everything that we can on the Finder and updated so that you can find it. There are a few other things that it's worth just mentioning in terms of funding that fall outside of what we would think of as our general scholarships and bursaries and the loans and things. Some of that is other funding that will be available from other parties. So student finance, via the student finance system, you may have access to things like disabled students allowance. There are also childcare grants and parental learning allowances there, as well as adult dependent grants. So if you have any adult dependents, similar to the childcare grants, there are grants and things there. All of those, the disabled students allowance, all of those grants are non-repayable. So they're not just additions to your loan. You will get the loan and then be eligible for additional grants from them, depending on your circumstances. Similarly, there are some travel grants, which typically are for students on year abroad or placement years. But all of the information on all of those can be found on the Student Finance England website. We then have some other things at UCL. So there is an accommodation bursary, which is an additional support for students who are from low-income backgrounds. That's run by the accommodation office at UCL. And then the care leavers and estranged students bursaries are other things that my team run. They're kind of automated. They're run through the student finance system. So when a student would be identified as a care leaver or estranged via student finance, we would have that flagged to us, and there is an additional £1,000 bursary that those students be eligible for. Everything I've talked about really is kind of looking forward to the year. So it's the things that you would be thinking about now, applying for now. We do also have additional support for students when they're on course. So Financial Assistance Fund is a big one for us. This is a fund that is there to support students who find themselves in hardship while they're studying. So even if you have a very good plan, you get your loan, you may have other sources of income, you may have family support, you may work part-time, you may have some savings from before you started that kind of go in addition to your loan to help you cover your costs. And then something happens, some money doesn't come through, or you find there are additional costs you weren't expecting, or the classic one that we always think about is things like someone's laptop is stolen. You are then able to apply to us for a little bit of additional support. These aren't massive amounts of money. They're typically up to a maximum of £2,500, and you can really only apply once in the year. So it's not guaranteed. Every student who applies is assessed on their own merits. We read through every application, and they're all looked at independently. But there is additional support there should something happen, should you find yourself in difficulty. We also have those short-term loans, which are much smaller. They're really only up to £250, but they're specifically there to help you if there is a delay to your funding for some reason. So should you get a loan and for some reason your loan doesn't come through quite in time for the start of term, and you just need a little bit of money to tide you over until it does, then we've got short-term loans there that you could apply to. You can access those and get in touch with us about them via our website. And speaking of our website, that is our website there. So these are some useful links. That's the students' fees and funding. It has things like the cost of study on it, and other information about our student funding advisory service, which I have colleagues who are able to meet with people about budgeting, any financial issues they might be having, and kind of talk through the situation with you. We've then got our scholarships. So that is our main page. There is a block on each area of study, or sorry, level of study. So there is like an undergraduate page, which talks you through a lot of what I've just talked about now, kind of going through the broad way that undergraduate funding works. And then has links across to all of our different scholarships and things. We have the Finder, with which you, as I showed, you can effectively use a search engine to see what you might have available to you. That the gov.uk one there is Student Finance England, so that's run by the UK government, and that from that student finance page you can look at all of the eligibility for loans and things, all the different types of funding that's available from them. And then Money Saving Expert is just a useful one for you to have in your back pocket. It's got lots of advice for students, ways to save money, ways to be a bit more frugal, particularly with potentially the concerns that you might have about the cost of studying in London. And that's our website, our email address there. So if you have any questions about all of the things that I've spoken about, and you don't want to ask them to me now, you can reach out to us and contact us at studentfunding@ucl.ac.uk, and one of my colleagues in the undergraduate team will be able to reach out and answer them for you. However, but long before that, I am obviously here right now. So if you do have any questions that you would like to ask, then I would be happy to answer them. Before we finish.
So we do have some questions for you, Ben, in the chat. I think this, although this might have been answered, you might feel this has been answered by before during a sort of later part of your talk. Is there any specific financial aid for international students or European students?
So there isn't financial aid in the sense. Lots of these words are very difficult to pin down. Whether something is financial aid is a term often used by American students, meaning loans. So financial aid in that sense, there is nothing that equates to loans available for international students from the UK government. That is kind of the same as the loans that are available to UK students. However, for international students, there are lots of initiatives within people's own countries that might allow them to make use of financial aid packages and loan packages from their own countries. So the reason I mentioned the US is that is a very big one for us. The American loan system, as it currently stands, I say that advisedly because things are changing constantly in that arena. But as the American loans student loan system currently stands, students are able to bring their loans to UCL. We have hundreds of students every year who come on kind of full packages of US federal direct loans, as well as some private loan providers from the US that provide student loans. So that is available to students from the US to come. There are similar loan schemes in Canada that are more at a state level, where you can bring those loans over with you. So it will depend upon your country. Those are the big ones that we know about, where we have an actual relationship with the loan providers. We don't tend to have that kind of relationship with loan providers elsewhere, but I know, for instance, that there are student loans in Denmark that people can bring with them. So I've spoken to a student recently who has those. So there are places that's available. The UK government does not currently offer loans to international European students unless they are have settled status in the UK and are living in England at the point at which they start their course. So We do have some scholarships, as I mentioned. There is our global undergraduate scholarship, and depending on what's available throughout the rest of the summer. I mean, sometimes we do get things quite late, so it may be that it's worth keeping an eye on our scholarships finder just in case anything else comes through from any new donors or anything. But broadly, yeah, for financial aid, you'd be looking at loan providers within your own country.
Thank you. Okay, so there's a couple of variations on that. What's also apart from international students. Okay. One person says, I'm a disabled student and I'll be commuting from Essex. Is there travel funding available?
Yeah, so we don't have a specific fund like that. There is not a specific UCL travel fund at all, let alone a specific one for disabled students. However, UCL has a very rigorous disabled student support service, and there is the disabled students allowance from the government that is on top of any loans that you take out. So absolutely, there is support out there. It is not something that my office runs. So it's not something that, like the undergraduate bursary, where our central funding team is managing that. But between UCL's disability advice service and the disabled students allowance from the government, there is definitely support there, and I would certainly advise reaching out to the UCL support and wellbeing team, because they'll be able to talk you through lots of those options and highlight for you things that you may not have known were available.
And then, thank you. And then, not sure if this is a finance question or not, and I'll answer the first part of it. But so the question is, does the university help students find jobs during and after the course? So in terms of finding a job after the course, we do quite a lot to help students in that. So the first thing we do is that a lot of our activities and a lot of the assessments are quite heavily tailored to what we know that employers want, what skills we know that we know employers want students to have. And that's why our assessments include things like doing presentations, writing structured reports, doing various other activities, maybe completing a coding, being able to produce a report using a particular coding language, for example, rather than just essays and exams, because we know that helps students. The second thing that we do to help students find jobs is that we have several careers events throughout each year that we invite all students to. So there we have a variety of different speakers come in from different organizations to talk about working in those organizations, and those always finish with a networking session where students are able to chat with leaders from those organizations who are looking to recruit, and that's something that we do several times every year. In terms of helping students find part-time jobs during and after the course, I'll ask our current students that when we get to the Q&A. But Ben, did you have anything you wanted to say on that?
Yeah, I mean, just to say that there is definitely support out there. I mean, the UCL Careers Service, while it is its focus may seem primarily to be about careers beyond UCL, they do provide job listings and things depending on what is available, and the student union also do. So there is support out once you get here. There are places to go to find that information. UCL Careers and the student union are the two places that I think of as being the best places for that kind of direction.
That's great, Ben. Thank you. Right, that's all the questions that have been posted in the chat about student finance. So thank you again, Ben, for your time. And I'm going to pass back to Kartikeya now to hopefully do the taster lecture that he was hoping to do earlier.
Thanks very much, everyone.
Thanks, Matt. And hopefully, second time lucky. Let me share my screen and it works. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, we can do.
Okay, so you can see. Thank you so much, and thanks for your patience. I've heard Matt talking about the course, and he discussed the fact that all the teaching in the department is done by full-time academics. Almost all of us, I think, have PhDs, doctorates, and specializations. And on top of that, once we start doing our research work, we work on distinct research projects. And I thought it would be really useful for prospective students to know how does the research and how does that remit feed into the content that they get and how we teach them. So I thought it would be a good idea to talk about this project that I've been running for the last 7 years now on cybercrime against older people, and then bring you up to speed about how this research is then fed into the various modules that we teach here, both at undergraduate and postgraduate level. So let me just give you start by talking about what we mean by cybercrime against older people, and what is the connection of what's happening technologically to this particular kind of crime. So what we know now from all the data that we have and the research that's been done is that more and more people are now going online. So much so that they're the fastest growing demographic online. And this is facilitated largely by use of smartphones. Smartphones have become cheaper, they've become more accessible, their designs are now brilliant in terms of anybody can use them. And there are lots of old people now who are using smartphones to get online. And you have to remember that a lot of old people have time on their hands. Some of them are retired, others have moved on to different lifestyles, second professions, and they're using all of that change in their life to go online and facilitate what they're doing. The COVID pandemic played a big part in bringing older people online because they constituted a especially vulnerable group, which meant that they had to be more careful about isolating themselves. And that isolation could be dealt with only through going online, by staying in touch with their friends and relatives through social media, through WhatsApp, through video calls. They also used that time in order to order groceries, to buy products, something that they could not do in the normal course of isolation. So what are older people doing online? They're going online to stay in touch with their family and friends. They're using social media. They're, like I said, they're buying goods and services for entertainment, for having relationships. In short, they're doing everything that you and I would do, or anybody who's a regular user of online services would do. And this process holds great benefits for older people. It helps them get access to information and services. We all know that a lot of information provided by large organizations, by governments, by specialist websites is all online, and older people make use of that. They go online to keep in touch with family, like I said, to deal with loneliness. Loneliness is a major factor with older people. There are known proven links between loneliness and the debilitating effect it has on mental and physical health. And the online space helps older people tackle that problem. They also go online to play games largely to remain cognitively sharp. And there's again research to show that there are links between lack of cognitive decline and engagement online to get goods delivered home. And overall, what we really need to understand is that the internet brings great benefits, especially in terms of positive impact on older people's health. There's a study which has come out last week, got a lot of traction in the media, and that said exactly that. Now, while I'm talking of all these benefits and the positive aspect of cyberspace for older people, what we have to remember is that as crime scientists, we understand that with each opportunity that is where there are positives, there's also an opportunity for criminals to commit crime. And that's exactly what's happened with older people. And we started thinking, how do we study this new evolving crime in our department? So let me take you quickly through the philosophy of crime science and how our department works. Our discipline is inherently multidisciplinary. So we like to involve academics, specialists from any discipline whatsoever it is, as long as it has an impact on a particular crime. So I'll give you a quick example of cars. So crime scientists have worked with automotive engineers, they've worked with car designers, they've worked with town councils in order to have an impact on car theft, right? So to prevent either theft from cars or theft of cars itself, because they realize that, people with just one specialization may not be enough, or their skills may not be adequate to have a real world impact. So our discipline is multidisciplinary. We are also inherently applied. So we like to have an impact on crimes. So we work with real world problems to find real world solutions. And this also feeds in very neatly into the UCL policy of research and teaching. So if you go online and have a look at what UCL advises academics to do, we are told that we should have a through line of research built into our teaching curriculum. So what we're doing for research today should be a part of our curriculum tomorrow. And the benefit that holds for students is that you are exposed to latest cutting edge research in the classroom. So whether you're an undergraduate student, postgraduate student, or a PhD who's involved in that research, you're getting the same content and the same material. And if you think about it, that's quite great, because you can be confident that the degree that you're doing at UCL and what you in our department and what you're being taught, it is the state of the art, the latest research in the field. So how did I start my journey on studying cybercrime against older people? So like much else in crime science, it started with a collaboration. It started with a collaboration with the Division of Psychiatry at UCL. And the reason I reached out to them was that psychiatry has a long tradition and well-developed literature on understanding the challenges and lived experiences of older people. They've been asking this question about what makes older people vulnerable for a very long time. And I rightly believe that we can take that research and apply it to this new and evolving crime type, which was cybercrime. So I teamed up with a professor from UCL Psychiatry and a couple of her research students, and we started doing the research, which led to a series of research projects, which basically shows that the footprint of our research is wide, not just in terms of disciplines, but also geography. The whole research journey started in Mumbai, which is the financial capital of India, when we got a grant from one of the research councils to go and ask what makes older people in India's financial capital vulnerable to cybercrime. And that had some really interesting results, which have been published in a couple of journals. And that led to more work in the UK, because once the results were published here, we got contacted by banks and the police to say, hang on, what you found in Mumbai is actually something that we need to look at in the UK as well. And that developed into a larger project with the PhD students and grants, and that's something ongoing. At the same time, I did a study in Delhi because we were trying to come to grips with the scale of the problem. And a key finding was that there are organized criminal groups which specifically target older people in Western countries while running fake call centers in other parts of the world. And that was a really interesting project, going and looking at the evidence that's been collected by the police from people who've been arrested at these fake call centers to try and understand their modus operandi and what we can do to protect older people in other parts of the world. So as I've mentioned before,
I worked with a number of stakeholders. This included police in multiple countries, HelpAge UK, which is a non-governmental organization, the FCA, a large number of banks, high street banks here in London, and the Ministry of Justice from the government. So the overall point I'm trying to make is that our research is applied. We want to have an impact, and we are dealing with real world problems. And that's exactly what we are bringing to the classroom as we continue to do our work. Some examples here of working with stakeholders, working with the police in Delhi, and a flyer that my PhD student used in order to contact people who'd been victimized by these gangs here in the UK. So before I proceed, I'll just ask you to think about what you think makes older people vulnerable to online fraud. And I'll show you the results on the next slide. And if you just give yourself like 15 seconds to think of a particular reason why you think older people are vulnerable, and then check if that's what my research found. So the results were quite interesting. What we found was that traditionally, older people have been at a greater risk of fraud victimization. So here we're not talking about the cyberspace, but in the physical world as well, older people are more vulnerable to fraud. They seem to be more trusting, especially when they think the source from which the message is coming is authoritative. So if they get a mail from HMRC or IRS saying, you owe us some money, they're more likely to believe it than a younger person. They find it harder to discriminate between fake or dodgy sources, which again, if you think of online and the sophistication which these gangs can now use in order to mimic individuals or mimic documents, it just opens them up to huge amounts of victimization. And practically speaking, older people have access to money. They have access to their pension pots. Many of them have invested the money they've earned in their lives quite wisely, which makes them an attractive target for the criminals. And all of this leads to them being targeted by specialist criminals, as we found out in our research. They also, at an individual level, demonstrate unfamiliarity with technology. There are cognitive issues such as memory loss, loneliness. So this is something that I touched upon earlier. In crime science, we have this theory called the routine activity theory. And basically what it says is that, your routine activities, so what you spend more time doing, is also more likely to expose you to certain kinds of crime, which that activity is vulnerable to. So when older people are more lonely, they spend more time online, and more time in cyberspace means the chances of them interacting with criminal elements increases, and that leads to victimization. Loss of a spouse was found as a major factor. So again, some sort of an intersectionality between loneliness and feelings of anguish and distress that come into play when you've lost your spouse, which again is something that the online criminals were familiar with and targeted older people. We also found that there was a huge sense of shame in older people reporting victimization. This had to do with things like ageism, feeling that they'd be judged by their friends and relatives, especially by their children, and inability to admit that they had been victimized. Often they saw themselves as willing participants in crimes, especially certain kinds of crimes like romance frauds, which play out over a long period of time, and older people just get sucked into it. And interestingly, we need to understand that older people these days don't have a choice. There's no distinction really between physical and digital, right? We've heard so much about banks closing their high street branches, right? And if you're an older person and you go into a physical branch of a bank, they're likely to come up to you and have a word with you if you want to suddenly withdraw £30,000. But online, if you're using your app on your phone, it's a generic design. There are no safeguards. You can use the app to transfer your entire pension amount to somebody else, and no one would even notice. So again, that leaves them vulnerable to cybercrime. So coming now to the point about how this research feeds into what you learn and your experience at UCL. I've used this research to supervise both undergraduate and master's dissertations, students who are writing their PhD thesis, and address that UCL policy of building a through line of research into teaching. Particularly for undergraduate students, I run a full module in your second year, second term, which is called the Project Week, where students come in and work on a realistic research call from a UK bank. So we pretend we follow the policy of verisimilitude, where basically the students act as expert consultants for a high street bank in the UK. And the problem that they've been given is that the bank feels that its older customers are vulnerable to cybercrime, and what can we do in order to safeguard them? So the students work in teams. Each student is given an individual specialization. So I say, okay, you guys work on it as if you were working for the police, you with the bank. Another set of students act as investigative experts on investigative decision making. And we have 4 days of intense lectures running from 9 to 5, where we make a real world team of expert consultants. I give the students a mock data set, and ultimately they're supposed to write a report for the bank. So the students find it very interesting. I've had very good feedback on this project. It kind of also feeds into the whole idea of going out and working in the real world, getting a real job. So I work with the team, which includes my PhD students and other researchers, and we try to make the experience just like it would be if they were going and working for a bank as an expert consultant. And that really helps them polish up their professional side as well as the research side. In terms of just final slide, example of impact that this research has had, the policy briefing and the papers from this research and the findings have been cited in multiple places, being used by the government as well as the police. And over Christmas, we got really good media coverage for one of the studies that we published in a prominent journal. So that's it for me. Thanks for your time. And if you have any questions, just put them in the chat.
Okay, thank you very much, Kartikeya. So now I'm going to ask 2 of our current students, Emma and Alanis, to join me. And Kartikeya, if you could stop sharing your slides, please. Thank you. Hi, so would you like to just introduce yourselves first of all?
Yeah, perfect. So my name is Alanis. I am the first year and I'm also a UK student.
I'm Emma. I'm my 3rd year and I'm also a UK student as well.
So we've got 2 people here who are either end of the course. Alanis has been with us since starting last October, and Emma is just about to take her very final assessments before she graduates this summer. So I'm just going to recap the questions that have been answered in the chat. So first person asked, how many students are there in the program? This inevitably varies slightly from year to year, but normally it's between 60 and 70. That's how many we're expecting to admit this autumn. Students generally are together as a whole group for sessions like lectures, and sometimes together with students from other programs, particularly in the 2nd and 3rd year, or if students are taking more specialist optional modules. And then students are broken up into smaller groups for things like tutorials and workshops. Somebody asked, does the department help students to secure work placements? So yes. So some other universities that offer work placements, the student has to go out and find the work placement themselves, and all the university is doing is giving them credit for that. That's not how we run it, because we want all of the work placements to be really high quality experiences for students. And so the way we do it is that we maintain and develop those relationships with different organizations, with companies, with police forces, with government departments. And then, so we're the ones that are setting up. We have 2 members of staff who set up the work placements. So what students do is that they start off by writing an application, doing a CV. If they're shortlisted for the application for that work placement, they will, because the students are applying for specific placements. They will then be asked to come for an interview. Those interviews are taking place at the moment. And so students are then interviewed by the organisation to work out that, so that the organisation can be confident they're a good fit. And then the placement itself will start later in the year. The next question that normally we get is how many students do a work placement. Normally it's about half of our students. We would like it to be more, but it's the limiting factor is how many really good quality placements we can find, because we, like I said before, we don't want students to be just photocopying. We want students to be doing something that's a really worthwhile use of their time and gives them a variety of different useful skills. We had a question, can we pursue modules from other departments too? Yes, so those in your 3 third-year options can be modules taken from outside the department. We have a list of pre-approved modules that we think they're run by the departments, but we think they're relevant to our students. So that would be, so international security would be one of those. Ethics of AI is one that I've already mentioned. But if students want to do another module that we've not seen, that we've not noticed before, then what they do is they come to me as the program lead, and I work out whether that's sufficiently linked to security or sufficiently linked to relevant skills for us to authorize it to be part of the degree. And normally we do end up saying yes. So quite a lot of students take modules from outside the department. So in terms of study hours per week, so we normally, so we only offer this program as a full-time program. So everybody who studies on this program is a full-time student. And what that means, so students do a couple of other things on top of that sometimes. So Wednesday afternoons, all UK universities are reserved for sports and societies and clubs. So we don't teach on Wednesday afternoons. But other than that, we expect students to be on campus usually 4 days a week during term time, which is so that's from October through to the middle of December, and then from the second week in January through to the end of March. So we expect students to be on campus usually 4 days a week. Some terms it might be 3 days a week, but normally it's 4 days a week. Students will be doing about 12 hours a week in a classroom with a member of staff. The rest of the time, which is about 2/3 of study time, students are either going to be doing work on their own, so we might have given them some reading or some problems to solve or some code to write, or they'll be working in small groups. And we do quite a lot of group work. That's something that students sometimes say they struggle with a little bit, but it's another one of those things that we do a lot of to develop transferable skills for students. Okay, so those are all the questions that we had that we've answered already on the chat. Right, so first is a question about students from the US wanting to go back into US jobs. So we generally find that UK degrees are quite UK undergraduate degrees are quite highly regarded in the US for a couple of, mainly because they're a little bit more specialized. So US degrees can be quite generic in terms of undergraduate degrees anyway, can be quite generic in terms of what their content, whereas UK degrees tend to be more focused on crime and security science or physics or whatever the subject is. And so when we have US students, I don't think any of them have ever had a problem going on to find a good job at the end of the course. Is it too early to specialize in this subject at bachelor's level? Well, we don't think so. And actually, one of the things that we are quite proud of on this program is the variety of different things that students study, and we get students go into quite a wide variety of different things. Emma, can you talk at all about the sort of different jobs that people in your cohort are looking to go into, or maybe have secured jobs already? I know in some
Yes.
cases.
So I know people going into like more the police range, so doing like detectives, which is kind of following maybe more of like the policing discipline that we kind of pick up through the way. I know people wanted to do like more of the data science, so again continuing programming or the statistical like applications we study. I think like people are also taking this and then going into more of the diplomatic, so international relations side of things. I would really second Matt here. Like it is very interdisciplinarity, and you can really take it in the direction that you want to go. And because we kind of use loads of different like disciplines, you can kind of pick up what interests you and then follow that route through.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Okay. So, a question for the students then. What's something that you'd wish you'd known at the start that you know now? Alanis, you look like you want to say something.
Yeah, I'll say to not worry that you won't know something. For example, for programming, I was worrying that maybe I didn't know how to code, or maybe I didn't have that pre-experience or knowledge of it. So I would just say, just be calm, because everything you will learn is by scratch on every single module. Like everyone will be on the same place when you are in there. For example, maybe in crime mapping or programming, or just in all modules that you. So don't worry about having to do like readings and stuff like that, because everyone will know all the same, like the same knowledge. Yeah.
I would
Emma?
also probably say that like kind of use the assessments to dictate what you want to focus on later and kind of explore the different, whether like that's crimes or industries. Like I kind of used each of my assessments to study a different type of crime, and then I found one that is maybe a bit more interesting to me. So like comparing maybe like burglary or domestic violence to like financial crimes, kind of using your assessments to kind of experiment with the industry of crime that you want to get into.
Okay, thank you. So the so next question that's come in is quite a specific one. Which programming languages are learned? So students, and this is actually different for our current students. We are changing this for next year, so the current students may look slightly at this. So from so the what you'll do is you will learn Python, which is a general purpose programming language, in the first year. In two modules, one each term. And then you will learn R, which is a specialist language for data analysis and reporting of data analysis in different formats. In the second year, in two more modules, and then you'll also use R in the third year in the data science module. Now, depending on what options you choose, you might also use some other tools. So if you chose the simulation module, for example, in the third year, then you'd use some other languages. But all of our students graduate with a decent level of understanding of both Python and R. Okay, so what's the next question then for you guys? The so well, one question that's just come in. What would you say are the advantages of this course versus psychology and criminology course?
I could answer that definitely. I would say just being multidisciplinary, that we we looked at every single discipline, like every single discipline that we can put crime into. For example, we say criminology and psychology sort of have like three questions that you want to maybe answer, but with this course, you do a range of different things. For example, we can bring, for example, architecture or anthropology. It's just a range that crime be involved in and how you can answer crime in it's a more like holistic way, I would say. So it doesn't like close like doors. It's just a range.
Yeah, and we try very hard not to close doors, to give people lots of different options. So questions also come in about different master's degrees that people go on to do. Emma, you're going off. You've got a place on a master's program next year. Is that right?
Yes, I do, yes.
Can you talk a bit more about the different master's programs that you and other people on your cohort are going into?
So I know a number of people in my cohort are going on to our integrated masters,
Yeah.
which I'm sure you'll touch on later or in the future, which kind of bridges the gap between our undergrad and PhD programs within our department. So I know a lot of people staying on and kind of taking those modules because it also opens doors to further modules within UCL as a whole. I know people going into more of like, again, like international relations, kind of doing global politics. The same again with the data science touch. So people want to go more into like the analytics of crime or even just applying this to further broad like aspects of crime. I'm doing mine in security and resilience. So kind of linking maybe more to the engineering aspect of our course, looking into how we can like design out crime and then looking at more of the resilience of like the technical side of criminality. Oh, you're muted, Matt.
Thank you. Sorry. Yeah, so we've got people going into, we have people go to do a variety of different things. We've got a couple of people I know going to do data science related things at Cambridge. People going to do more psychologically related things at various other places. So yeah, so there's quite a few people can go and do masters in quite a few different fields after graduating. One of the ways in which we try and make sure that we're not closing doors is that a lot of our staff come from different disciplines. So, I mean, my undergrad degree, albeit it was a long time ago, is in politics with international studies. We have, I think, Kartike's undergraduate degree was in law. We also have people who've come from backgrounds in electrical engineering, computer science, maths, geography, languages, all sorts of different things, and are now using those skills and applying them to crime and security problems. And so that's one of the ways in which we help give students as much choice as possible once they finish. So that's all the questions that I've got, and we're coming to the end of our time in any case. So I just want to finish up by saying thank you for your time today. If you've got any further questions, then you can look on our website, and Julia's just putting some links in the chat that you can see. If you want to get more information, you can also email us and Julia's put the email address in the chat as well with any follow-up questions that you've got. So for those of you that have already that have got an offer, I look forward to meeting you in person at the end of September for you to start your journey here at UCL. But like I say, if you've got any questions in the meantime, do feel free to get in touch with us. And thanks again for your time.